the other person with whom you happen to be practicing NLP as a technique. So pacing could simply begin with pacing the breath of the other person, so breathing in the same rhythm as the other person. It could then also add up to pacing in terms of the body language of the person, how the person happens to be sitting or standing, and trying to mirror that in an easy, effortless manner. Pacing could also mean pacing with the tone and the voice and the rate of speech of the other person. And the entire purpose of pacing is mainly to be in sync with what space the other person happens to be in, and then, if necessary, try to lead. So leading would mean, for example, that you're pacing with a person who happens to be extremely agitated and you want to calm him or her down without saying that in so many words. So then you pace the person. Of course, be mindful of the fact that you don't get agitated in the process. You're merely mirroring the person's physiological symptoms.
He will lead to you.
Yes, otherwise you will unconsciously be led by the person. So pacing is a very conscious process. You're only mimicking physiological symptoms. You're not picking up emotions. You may be aware of the emotions, but you're not picking it up and getting led in the process. So leading would mean that you establish that sync, and after a few minutes then you start leading, which means you start deliberately feeling calm, and therefore you relax your body language, you relax your voice, your pace of breath, and because you're in what is called unconscious rapport with the person, the person tends to get led and therefore will relax with you, will calm down with you. Okay? So that's one of the basics of NLP in terms of any kind of process or pattern that we would follow. Pacing and leading can also be used for learning. So if you want to learn a skill from a person, so let's say there's a famous artist painting and you're trying to paint beside him, you can start pacing the person to mimic his or her physiological symptoms again, and then try and be led. Now here, earlier we were talking of leading the person. Here you let yourself be led by the person when that person happens to be in that moment of artistry or skill, whatever is being practiced. So it could be a public speaker, it could be a great cook, it could be a singer, any kind of a skill that you're trying to learn. So now you pace the person and then be led by the person. So then be in that physical and possibly emotional state if you're able to pick that up, and then do whatever skill is it that you're trying to replicate. Works as a beautiful technique for learning. If you're using pacing and leading for learning, you don't even need to be in physical contact with the person. That you could be watching a video of a person and do a pacing and leading, pacing and learning. So that's also possible. And the whole purpose, where there are various perspectives in terms of why NLP should be used and how it should be used, and a lot of criticism in terms of the fact that it can be manipulative sometimes. But going back to basics, the core idea why John Grinder and Richard Bandler researched NLP and worked on the entire theory behind it is purely to model excellence. So what Bandler and Grinder did was mainly look at people who are extreme geniuses in their respective fields, and they looked at what do these people do to be these kind of geniuses. So they tried to what they termed as model, which means primarily started with pace and lead, pace and lead, pace and learn. And so they modeled healers, they modeled doctors, artists, singers, all kinds of people who are geniuses in their field. And the entire purpose was to model excellence. So if one person can get to that level of excellence in a certain field, it's possible that the others can as well through the techniques of NLP. So that's the basics. In the last part of the series, part 2, we spoke about representational systems. So we use our sense organs as representational systems, and at a certain point in time, usually one particular system happens to be more active or more dominant than others. So rep systems are mainly our eyes, our ears, speech, touch, a sense of smell as well for some people. And normally when you talk of one rep system being more dominant, it would mean that if you had to think today, sit back and think about that particular incident or the memory of it, it would come to you more in one form than in another. Right? So if I say, for example, now think about your first date or the first time you met your spouse or something like that, some of you are likely to get a visual of it, because that seems to be the rep system that was very active at that point in time. Right? Some of you may hear the sounds you happen to have heard when you met the person the first time. For some of you, it may bring back the memory of a smell, maybe of food or flour or something like that. So the rep system that happened to be active at the point of the incident is what tends to stay in the memory. So when we use NLP for the purpose of healing, shifting patterns, shifting memories, it helps to touch that particular rep system which happened to be active at that point in time. So that's what we touched upon the last time. Today we look at a particular pattern. Now patterns are various kinds of tools that are available in NLP in order to be able to shift various things. It could be shifting beliefs, habits, various kinds of things which can bring about self-development. Now, as we speak of the swish pattern today, an assumption with any pattern that you would use in NLP is, if you're doing it with somebody else, you can safely do it in whatever way you want with yourself, but if you're doing it with someone else, it is necessary that you're pacing the person before you get into the pattern. Okay, so that's an assumption with any pattern that you would use. When you're doing it with yourself, the assumption, of course, is you're aware of what state of being you are at that point in time, so it's all right. But with other persons, it's absolutely necessary to pace and begin the pattern only when you're completely sure that you're absolutely pacing the person and the person is at ease while doing this. So the swish pattern is one of the tools that is used primarily for bringing about a shift of some kind internally. So it could be a shift of habit, it could be replacing a certain memory which is not very nice, not very pleasant, it could be shifting a behavioral pattern. And in case of this particular pattern, we necessarily use the visual rep system, okay, the visual modality, because that's the quickest to be changed. So before we get into the pattern, we'll spend some time understanding the visual modality. Now, each modality has various sub-modalities. Sub-modalities would mean what are the finer aspects of that particular modality. So when we see, what are the things that make the most impact. So when we see a particular thing, for some of us the impact is in terms of the detail. So if I have to give you, if let's say I have to show you a certain flower, some of us may pick up the general shape and size of that flower. Some of us may get into the intricacies in terms of what kind of a pattern are the petals arranged in. Some of us may be touched more by the color of the flower. For some of us it may be the mild variances in the shades between various petals. So each of us, although all of us are looking at it visually, get touched by different kind of sub-modalities. So when we use the swish pattern, we will be anchoring on the sub-modalities. Okay, so perhaps what we could do today is, I'll run you through the entire pattern and the sub-modalities, and maybe we'll spend the last few minutes trying it on ourselves and see how it's working for us. So sub-modalities could mean, for example, if I have to, let's say I'll ask you to think about let's say the visual of you coming into this building today. Okay, you walk through that lane and get into the lift. That particular incident, since that's common to all of us. Now think about how you happen to remember that particular walk from that lane till the lift. Okay, is that image a still image for you? Is it like a frozen picture, or is it?
We do it every day, so it's basic.
Specific today.
Yeah.
So think about it today. Now if you have to think back about that incident, what comes to mind? Is it a still frame? or is it like a motion picture? Can you see yourself moving through that
Mostly
patch?
moving.
Okay, so for you it seems to be moving. Anyone who's got a still picture?
Yeah, once you're inside,
Got a still.
Still
once,
picture.
once you're inside, it's a still picture.
Once you're inside, it's still okay. Okay. So when you think, once you're inside, so are you still able to see yourself back there?
Yes.
You're still able to see it. So
Because
okay.
while coming, I saw the BMC truck standing there just at the entrance. So I remember immediately.
Okay. So you picked up on the detail over there. There's some anchor. Okay. So for some of us it's still, some of us it's moving. So it's like, as you work through this, identify what your submodalities are. So if it happens to be moving for you, so a powerful submodality for you is movement. Right? So if you want to change a memory of something or even shift a habit or something like that, what you need to do is actually don't give power to the modality that is working for you. So now if I want you to not remember this incident well, what I would probably ask you to do is convert that moving picture into a still picture, and then you'll lose track of that memory because the submodality doesn't resonate with you. Right? Or the other way around for some of us. So still and moving are a couple of the submodalities. Then you have color in black and white. So again, when you visualize that image walking through that lane, does it come to you in color or does it come to you like a black and white frame?
Black.
Black and white. Color.
Black and white.
Color.
So you've got color, you can see the BMC truck there. Okay. Alright. Again, so identify which is the strong. So for those of you for whom it's black and white, you know that black and white resonates as a submodality. It has that submodality has a lot of power, which means something that's presented to you in black and white as a picture is very likely to register far more than a color picture is supposed to register. Is the image 2D or 3D?
3D.
3D?
What do you mean by 2D?
2D is like a flat thing, like you're almost looking at a painting or a photograph. 3D would be like almost like a movie where you can see the contours of things.
Like
around.
what you see right now. They are 3D.
Yeah. So currently, as you see, you're seeing 3D visuals, right? You can see the depth of the room and all of that, the height and everything. If it's 2D, it's just a flat picture, flat image. So for some of us, the natural perception is 3D. Some of us, it's 2D.
But is it not 80 to 90% people will see 3D only? Recent.
No, most of us see 3D, but then when you remember,
Okay.
especially for people who tend to remember still visuals, they tend to sometimes remember it as 2D. It's not that they can't see 3D, they'll still see it, but the memory is that of pictures.
Strong
Yeah.
2D.
Yeah.
Impact.
Yeah. So 3D or 2D, again, those are very important submodalities. The next one is when you think of that visual again, is there like a border to that visual? Do you see some kind of a frame to it, or is it just hazy around? You see a picture but then there's no end or closing to it.
3D. That's the
3D, but do you find a frame around it? Is it like a...
More or less.
Okay. So there is some sort of a border to it. For some of us, you may find that there's no end to it, it just gets a little hazy as it goes to the side. So again, that's another submodality to be looked at. The next part is the clarity of the picture. Is it blurred, hazy, or is it clear? Like with some people, if you happen to have seen a BMC truck, you'll possibly even remember what's written on the truck. Right? That's extremely clear.
People, they are loading
Yeah.
all kachras and...
Yeah. So for some of us, we'll remember that. For some of us, it's blurred. I mean, you know that was the visual of you coming from here to here, but there's no particular visual impact of the entire scene.
Yeah, it's blurred. The
It's
light
blurred.
is very faint.
Okay. So that seems to be a submodality for you, so you will need to work with that as you go along. If you happen to make the image forcefully clear, the memory will be less sharper for you. So if you keep, if there's a particular memory that you're working with and you keep making it clear, it will lose its impact on you. So let's say you want to forget a particular incident in life, you can keep thinking about it and try and infuse clarity into that picture.
Actually,
And it will actually lose power.
so there is a saying, which it's a more like humor, I will put it. We try to forget them, whom we always remember. We taking name or
Yeah.
that incidents related
It
to
loses power.
that.
So, hazy or clear again is a submodality to recognize. Then, of course, the dullness, brightness of it. Some of us will see a lot of light in the scene. For some of us, it will be dull in terms of the colors and everything. Right or left, and right and left is indicative. Yeah, what I mean is the position. So, when I ask you to think about that visual of you walking in, where do you see it? Are you seeing to your right, to your left? Is it straight up? Is it up, down? Where is it that you're seeing it?
Actually, all around.
Actually, when I came inside, I saw some two waiters.
Huh?
Under shirt they were in Hinmata. So they were working for Hinmata. They spotted by this, And then I came inside and looked up help library and all.
Okay.
So it's quite fixed over here.
Okay. But
Same here.
so are you? When you say it, are you seeing the picture here? For you?
Front. Yeah, front. Yeah.
Probably up
Up,
a
yeah.
little in the front, right? For some of you, it may be in a different position. It may not be there. It may be here. It may be here. Wherever.
But the
you would
movement-
think
So
down
the
the road.
meeting,
But the
last
moment
one.
you think, then the shade shifts.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay. But yeah, the first.
sometimes here,
Yeah.
sometimes here.
Okay.
But front, but
It's in the front.
Yeah.
It's not one side
Yeah.
or the other. For some people, it's very clear. I mean, they tend to visualize it on a particular side. So when you ask them to recall, you'll even find that shift in their body language because suddenly
Yeah,
they'll tilt this way because the
Yeah.
image seems to be
Okay.
this way.
Yeah.
When you ask them to talk of a particular incident, typically the head will move to one
No,
side because
I
somewhere
have
the
seen
image-
some people. Generally, I mean, if you tell them what happened on that day, and they will shift their head.
Yeah,
Maybe
because
of
the
that.
submodality is there.
Yeah.
So if you want to get them to shift it, you will have to somewhere get them to tilt their head a little later in the process.
And the eye movement. I mean,
Yes. So right, left, or any kind of a position as the case may be. Another thing that comes with the positional rep system is it close or is it far? Like some of you will see it like right here. So for some of you it's a far off kind of an image. Again, that's something for you to note. How do you think it's very far or is it close by? And the last thing which is important is it associated or disassociated? Associated would mean that you know that when I ask you to visualize it, you're visualizing yourself walking by, but then what's happening is you're seeing that stretch and you're imagining that you have walked by, but you can't quite see yourself there.
okay.
You can remember the stretch, but when I ask you to visualize, you can't see yourself in the picture. That is associated in the sense that you're taking yourself out of the picture and then because you're linked to that memory. Whereas when it's dissociated, you're thinking about that image, but you're also at the same time able to imagine yourself walking through that patch. That's a disassociated thing, which means you're here and you're there as well. So there is that sense of distance from the memory. So you're able to see yourself, but you know that that's not you. You are here as well. That's disassociation.
And
So,
you see yourself or you don't see yourself?
yes,
More or less.
yeah. So
It's like a camera angle.
Okay, yeah.
yes. So when we work with the swish pattern, we will work necessarily with disassociation, which means it's important that you are able to see yourself
There.
in whatever frame that you're talking about. Because disassociation brings in a sense of being able to shift that pattern. If you're still associated, it would also mean that somewhere emotionally you're getting tagged to that visual.
Achha, then only that emotional shift will come.
Yeah. So you need to be able to
It is
push
so.
back and then start working with the pattern. So are we okay with submodalities? Yeah. These are specifically visual submodalities. So now coming to the swish pattern, there are 6 of these steps that we'll go through. So as I said earlier, any pattern that you work with, if you're working with somebody else, it's important to pace first. Only when you're sure you're in complete sync, you're in absolute unconscious rapport with the person, then start the pattern. Okay? If you're doing it with yourself, well, just be in a calm space and start doing it. It's okay. So swish pattern, as I said, can be used to induce any kind of a shift. So shift could be, for example, a change of habit. It could be a shift in associating with a particular kind of memory that may not be pleasant. It could be a particular behavioral pattern that you're trying to shift. Okay. So, for example, if I want to shift my thing about not wanting to go to the gym to exercise. Okay, I have a very clear preference for walking or jogging. If you tell me to go to the gym, it's not really my thing. Okay, so now if I want to shift that pattern and I want to overcome that resistance to going to a gym, the first part that I need to do is find my internal trigger picture. So what comes up the moment I say, alright, let's go to the gym. Okay. Now the trigger picture needs to be of just the moment before that habit or that pattern that you're trying to change. So the moment I say go to the gym, what is it that comes up just before I try and go to the picture? Now this can't be an external trigger, it needs to be the trigger which is in my head. Okay, so it's not about, let's say if I happen to see the gym door and there is something happening. No, that's an external trigger that may or may not occur in my life, right? So I'm talking of the internal picture in my head. So for example here, when I say chalo, let's go to the gym, for me the internal picture that comes to me is, oh my god, those weights. Yeah, and the picture that I can visualize is in terms of that whole heavy pull of the weight, and somewhere I feel in that picture I can see my body kind of shrinking and saying, no, don't want. Yeah. So there is that very clear trigger picture, which is that of seeing weights in front of me, seeing myself of course, because it has to be a disassociated picture, so I need to be there in that picture, right? So there is that equipment, there is me, and there is that shrunk posture to say, don't want. Right? So now before I go there, I need to check if that's really the trigger and is the response very clearly again. So now if I have to ask myself, alright, visualize that picture again, right? And if possible, down that body language, I can feel that loss of energy in the body, that demotivated kind of a feeling in the body. So if when you're doing it with someone else, start being in unconscious rapport as you're trying to find the trigger picture, and then ask the person to visualize the trigger picture and check, is the person getting the same emotion that he or she would before that particular habit or that pattern. Now at this point it is important to bring in all possible submodalities that are coming up. Okay? It's not just enough to have that visual. It's important that you get in all possible submodalities. For example, if I have to think of my visual, for me color is important. I am able to visualize color. Right? So I can see the color of that equipment, it's that grey bar, I can see myself in a grey t-shirt, there's that red seat of the equipment. So color is something that is working for me. I am able to see myself moving, so movement is happening for me, it's not a still picture. And for me the picture is also close, it's pretty much here, it's not far away. So I've got at least 3 submodalities to work with. I've got the distance, I've got color, and I've got movement. Okay. So now if I want this particular trigger picture to lose power, and I want this to lose power because that's the demotivator. Every time I think of going to the gym, somewhere this picture erupts in my mind, and whether I'm conscious of it or not, this comes up and then I lose my motivation, right? So now if I want this to lose
Go.
power, I need to change the submodality of this picture, right? So first thing I would want to change is I don't want to see this in color. So I will make a conscious effort to remember the picture and then haze it out to black and white. Right? So I will still visualize the picture, ensure that I'm seeing no color whatsoever, everything is grayscale, everything is black and white. The second thing I will need to do for the picture to lose power is, for me, distance is important, so I will push it away. Right? I don't want to see the picture here, I'll see it there. The third thing that was working for me was movement. Right? So somewhere there was some amount of movement happening in the picture, and I will freeze it at one point. I'll make it a still frame as I'm able to visualize it. So as I'm doing this, what I will try and do is, the moment I imagine the picture, for a few times I will push it away, make sure it's black and white, and make sure there's no movement happening there. So every time I remember the picture, push away, shift the submodality, shift all the submodality, whichever comes up for you. Making sense?
Yeah.
So if you're working with someone, make sure that once the person finds the trigger and the submodalities, the person is able to shift the submodalities in his or her mind. Okay? So submodalities could be different for different people. You usually find at least 3 submodalities, because normally people would have as many, 3 to 4. So I should be able to do that by the end of step 2. Step 3 now would be determining my outcome picture. What's my super outcome? What is it? If I were to successfully go to the gym regularly and work out, what will I gain? What is it that I'm likely to achieve? So it could be different things for different people. It could be in terms of, does my life change in a particular way? Will I feel emotionally different? Right? Some kind of shifts are emotional shifts.
See yourself. I know it's casual.
I don't want to get that. Probably just want to be able to trek better. That's all. So yeah, it could be an emotional shift. It could be a physical shift in terms of maybe I look different with the shift. It could be some kind of a lifestyle transformation that I see with doing this particular, inculcating this habit. So I need to determine what is my outcome picture. Now it's very important that when we say outcome picture, it is not the picture of the process. So I'm not talking of imagining myself working out in the gym. Right? I'm talking of
The end
post
result.
outcome.
End result.
What do I see? Yes, so end result, what do I gain out of it? So now if I have to picture my outcome picture, it will probably be about being able to trek on a steep hill without straining my back. For me, that's the outcome. So I'm not imagining myself in the gym. I'm imagining myself on a hill with equipment on my back and being comfortable with it, not getting strained with it. So now with the outcome picture, I need to ensure that I'm empowering it with the modalities that work for me. Which means in this case, I want it to be color, because color was important for me. I want it to be a moving picture, because the movement was necessary for me. And I want it to be here, I want it to be close, I don't want it to be far away. Right? So I need to ensure that I'm able to recall the outcome picture with all of those modalities which are necessary for me, which work for me. Okay? And if possible, and if you're working with people on this, try and also get them to add that emotional component to it in terms of how you feeling when you're standing there on that hill. And right? So what is the emotional component to it? Add it, it always enhances the process. Right? So step 1, find the trigger picture, find submodalities. The second thing, check if the person is able to shift submodality of the trigger picture. Third thing, find the outcome picture and ensure that you're empowering it with all the submodalities which were important. Right? So that's the preparation of the Srish pattern. And
In
then
first step, you have to add emotional component also. initially?
You
No.
can. Usually it tends to come with
Come,
the pictures. So
yeah.
normally when the
Naturally.
person, because it's a disassociated thing, right? So when the person sees himself, naturally there is that feeling of dejection or
Really?
tired or something which comes up naturally with the body language.
Basically, you're converting it into super slow motion. Like, you're taking, those decisions are happening in a second or 2 seconds, but you're cutting it, splicing
Yes. Because what you're doing is you're working with the programming, right? So you're shifting the programming. There is a natural state of programming which happens to be there already.
Right.
And you want to weed out that particular process and say, no, we don't want this, we want to replace this file with another file.
it. But sometimes the memory itself is so vague that
It's okay, it doesn't have to be a real memory.
Right.
What seems, usually what bothers the people is their perception of that memory. My belief about a particular thing.
Right.
Right? It may not be real.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, if I say that, let's say I don't like a particular political leader, right? Not that I've had any kind of a personal interaction with that person, it's my belief about the person which seems to cause agitation, right? So what I'm working with is my belief. Now, in my belief, I may say that, okay, I seem to have heard him somewhere, or I've heard, somebody has told me something about it. None of it is factual content, it's in my head. Right? So you're only working with that component because that's what is bothering me. The factual component does not bother me. That person may not have an impact on my life at all. It's what's in my head which is bothering me.
So it's a very slow process.
It is a slow process because you're identifying that particular belief or particular pattern which seems to cause a
Discomfort.
has a discomfort or an obstacle in the person's life. So yeah, in that sense, yes, you're really trying to identify micro patterns there.
And then you have to practice this over and over again to make it, make the brain think that.
Yeah, so the
once
first three
you
steps
do
were
it-
purely background to the pattern. We've still not done the pattern, right? So, right, so find at least 2, ideally 3, 4 submodalities should usually come up. Disassociation is necessary, right? Now, once the entire groundwork is laid for you, then you begin the swish process. The swish process in itself is simple. What you're doing is very quickly replacing the trigger picture with the outcome picture. Yeah, you're supplanting, you're sort of implanting it, and in that process taking out the old one. So what you do is you're asking the person to visualize the trigger picture, push the picture back. When I say push it back, you may change all the submodalities to the opposite, right? And then let the outcome picture slide in, right? So trigger picture, trigger, outcome. So in my case, if I have to do it, and of course you also give it a physical trigger. So normally I use this as a trigger. It could be, you could possibly tap on a knee, or you could somewhere in the body. Yeah, you could clap, whatever works for you. Any kind of a physical trigger helps. So well, what you would do in this case is, I would start with my trigger picture, which means that thing of seeing weights and feeling bad about it, and push it away, ensure that it's black and white for me, ensure that it's far away, right? And immediately bring in my outcome picture. In my case, it has to be color, it has to be moving, it has to be close by, right? And bring it in a very empowered way, as many modalities as you need for it. So keep doing that. The first couple of times it will be slow because that shift of the trigger picture will internally take some time. Once I'm able to do that, then I need to be able to swish. Swish is that process of changing, replacing trigger with outcome picture. I should be able to do that quick 50, 100 times at a stretch without a break. Okay, that whole swish process takes just about 2-3 minutes max. Initially it will be slow because that trigger picture takes a lot of time to go away. Okay? But as I keep doing this, I mean, normally most people like to close their eyes and do it because it's visual and you don't want distractions. So I keep swishing for a period of time till I'm sure that I've come to a point in time when I'm trying hard to visualize the trigger picture, but I can't. The outcome picture comes up. Okay, so I'm trying hard to say, "Chalo, visualize the initial picture," but somehow I'm not able to do it. The outcome picture keeps coming up very fast. That's when you know that in a way the file has been replaced. So normally what you would do is give it a couple of, do it for 2-3 minutes till the time the person is absolutely cannot really recall the trigger picture. Or even if you make an effort and recall, the person doesn't show the same body language or emotions as he did earlier.
Intensity is
Yeah, the intensity is totally gone. And the power of the outcome picture is very strong. So do that and then possibly give it some time, maybe 10-15 minutes, half an hour, and ask the person to think about that situation. Going to the gym. What comes up for you? That's like a check to see if the swish has happened clearly. And most often, and that's true for all NLP patterns, one time and it's done. If you've done it properly, it doesn't take repetition. So the best check is for me to be able to next time actually think of going to the gym, pick up my equipment and then see what's coming up. And if you've done the swish properly, very often what I will see is the outcome picture and therefore not exhibit that resistance to go back. So what is important is ensure that you do the swish process sincerely till you're very sure that the trigger picture is no longer coming up. Only the outcome picture comes up with all the modalities which are powerful for you. Okay, so that's pretty much the swish process. The important things you need to remember here is, trigger picture with submodalities, that's necessary. Ensure that the person is able to change submodalities for himself or herself. Outcome picture very clearly with the powerful submodalities, and ensure that the outcome picture is not part of the process, it is after the process of whatever is done. So if you're saying, if you're trying to, let's say a person is trying to quit smoking, then the outcome picture is not about next time I want to reach for the cigarette. The outcome picture is about having given up smoking, where am I?
In all of smoking, you are not smoking.
Yeah,
So
it could be that I'm standing with a group of friends who are smoking and how am I feeling? So it's about the post, overcoming part of the picture. It's not the process part of the picture. So that groundwork is crucial. If you're doing it with someone else, please ensure that even during the switch process, no matter how long it takes for the person, you continue to be in unconscious rapport. Because if you've started in unconscious rapport, at some point you lose motivation, the process will drop for the person. So you need to be responsible if you're working with somebody else here. If you're doing it with yourself, just stay in a calm room where you're not disturbed. The process in itself doesn't take long, it's like 5-10 minute process, but a very powerful one. And we've seen people getting over a lot of interesting things. Like I worked with one guy who had he had this fear. Long ago he had caused a car accident while reversing, and till date, I mean, it was almost a 7-8 year gap, and he couldn't reverse without being extremely slow and looking out multiple times, sometimes stopping the car, actually going out and checking everything's okay and then coming back. So there was an extreme fear of reversing a car. And one swish and it was done. He, in fact, to check it, he actually went out immediately to his car and actually tried reversing, and he did a very comfortable reverse. So we've tried it on all kinds of things. There was one lady who was doing it for going downstairs. I mean, she was comfortable climbing stairs, but if you had to climb down stairs, she would feel extremely dizzy, and there was that phobia of looking down, especially if the stairs are too long. Again, that was very easily overcome. She actually went down a 5-story building through the stairs after that. So you find very interesting results with this. So that's the
This works even for mental blocks,
any mental
like
blocks as
the
well.
fear of stage fright, for example. Does
Yeah,
it
you can.
work?
So if you're looking at stage fright, what you would do is the trigger picture would be just before going to stage what happens. That would be the trigger picture. Outcome picture would not be the process of giving a speech, but after having given a great speech, where are you? Right? So it's not that process which will be the outcome picture. Post process was the outcome. So outcome picture needs to be about you've
Applause.
given a great speech and someone's applauding or congratulating you for a great speech. That would be the outcome picture. Yeah. So can be used for any physical habits, mental shifts, or sometimes simply toning down a memory which is not nice.
Is this a part of hypnotism?
No.
But it's not, we're not really getting the person hypnotized in the process. You're just in unconscious realm. But there's no hypnotism here. There are NLP processes where you can use hypnotism, but this doesn't need it. Here all you're doing is working with the submodality, which is actually a conscious process. It's just that it happens at such a subtle level that we normally don't think of it as a conscious process. Like